Bruchim Abayim. We're continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, Siman Kuf Lamed Hey, the halachot of Kriyat Torah, and we are up to Seif Yud Aleph, Daf Yud Chet Amud Aleph of the regular prince of Mishnah Berura. Maran writes, V'yesh mi she'omer she'im kara Chazan Kohen or Levi ve'eno sham. If the Chazan called up a Kohen or Levi and he's not there, what do you do? Lo yikra la'acher b'shem. You should not call another person with name. In other words, it seems like the time of the Shulchan Aruch, the minhag was, it would say, Reuben ben Shimon ya'aleh laTorah bechavod, which many people do it nowadays as well, right? Some communities have the minhag that they call up the person, making sure that he is ready, and then before he gets an aliyah, the Baal Koreh or the Hazan says Ya'amod Peloni ben Peloni, and you already have made sure that he's there and he is ready to get the aliyah. That was the minhag in Tehran, where I grew up, and so on. But nevertheless, the Shulchan Aruch seems to say that you call up a person and he's not there, don't call another person with the name out loud, mishum pgamo shel rishon, because people who don't know that this Kohen was not, or this Levi was not in the shul, they're like, oh, I heard Ploni Almoni's name being called, but then he didn't get the aliyah. Must be that there's something wrong with him. Maybe he's not a real Kohen. So therefore, you kind of like let it slide as much as possible, and that the way it is you get another person to get an aliyah without calling the second person's name, quietly, because if you announce Reuben ben Shimon, and then you have to say Levi ben Yehuda afterwards, it's going to create a question mark in people's mind. So says the Shulchan Aruch, therefore, the other Kohen or the other Levi just goes up without being called with a name. And the Rama writes in parentheses, Kohen, and that's the halacha. And then he says, that the Kohen, Yachol likro Kohen acher la Torah, he could call another Kohen to the Torah. So even though that he himself is a Kohen, nobody's going to think that, well, he called the other Kohen, must be that he himself is a Kohen. No. He's the Baal Koreh, he's the Shaliach Tzibur, therefore there's no problem whatsoever. Now, a Jew, a regular Yisrael, im kra'u ve'eno sham, if you call his name and he's not in the shul, you could call another person out loud. This is only for a pegam of kehuna or leviyah that we are more stringent, because we want to make sure that the lineage of Kohanim and Leviim is untouched. And we don't take any risks with raising questions in their lineage, chas v'shalom. By the regular Yisrael, no one is going to really speak about them in a negative way, and therefore it's fine. Now, if you called the first one, didn't see him, didn't come up, you call the second one, and then the first one shows up, well, what do you do then? The Kaf HaChaim writes, halachically speaking, the first guy does not have any zchuyot. Just because you called him, he wasn't there, and that's it. That zeroes out the whole thing, as if nothing happened. But the yosher would be, says the Kaf HaChaim, the right thing would be that you should call him up to one of the upcoming aliyot, because you called him already. You don't want him to feel like he was not valued enough, and so on. So the yosher would be that you call him up in one of the upcoming aliyot. It's hard to be a gabbai. You see, you have to have so many heshbonot in your mind when you're a gabbai of a bet knesset, to be sensitive. It's not just knowing the halachot cold and well, but it's also to have the sensitivity of what's the right thing to do based on the time. And not everything is black or white. Many times you have to sacrifice one thing because of another thing, and to have that sharp mind and shikul hadat, that judgment, to have a proper judgment is a very big thing. Now, if you call the Kohen and he's not there, now if that Kohen is davening, is there, but he's davening, in that case, nobody is going to think that the Kohen was pasul, because he is standing in lahash, right? If anything, they're going to maybe throw eggs at the gabbai that didn't realize that, but they realize that he is davening. So therefore you could out loud call the second Kohen. There's no problem with calling the second Kohen out loud in the shul. That would be just fine. So it says, the Mishna Berura, what's the pigam that would come up from calling another Kohen or another Levi? People will think, must be, he called him and then someone told the Gabbai that he's pagum. This Kohen is not a legitimate Kohen. Maybe that's what happened. Otherwise, why would they call somebody else right away after him? The Katvu HaHaronim, the Poskim write that his own son could be called. In other words, if you called, Reuben ben Shimon, and he is not available, but his son is there, you could call his son, because if he was pagum, his son would be also pagum. Any Kohen that's pagum, his son also becomes pagum. So when you call his son, that offsets any chashash, any concern of being pasul, deim ita shehu pagum, af beno pagum, and therefore it will be fine. But can you call his father? No. The father you cannot call, because the father could be kasher, the son could become pasul. Right? For instance, you could have a son that married a gerusha. Right? His father is still a good kosher kohen. Right? It's no problem with the father. The son is pasul. Or if the father married a gerusha, married a zona, and had this child forever would be pagum, would be pasul. But the father, if he divorces the unlawful wife and accepts upon himself never to marry a person like that, he will go back to his kashrut. He's not a halal, but the son who was born from a gerusha or zona or halala will become halal, will never be a kosher kohen ever again. So therefore, you could call the son, because if the son is kasher, for sure the father is kasher. But if the father is kasher, the son not necessarily will be kasher, and hence that's the halacha. Now Kaf Chaim adds to this that you can't call his brother either. Well, you'll say, what's the problem with the brother? Right? But says the Kaf Chaim, even if they are twin brothers, that is the same mother, same father, same birth, same everything, same timing, chronology, everything is the same, but still, the tzibur do not know necessarily that they are twin brothers. They may think, he's from a different mother, maybe, who knows? We know that both of them are sons of this guy, but no one really knows the lineage of people in that way, and therefore it will become maybe a problem. So says the Mishna Berura, the Yomru Aviv Nasa Gerusha Mikvar Sha'av Kasher V'Aben Halal. You have many scenarios that the father would be kasher and the son would be halal, and therefore you cannot call the father, but you could call the son. Okay. Second Kohen, therefore, goes up without being called up to the Torah. That's a halacha that we mentioned, right? Second Kohen would just go up without being called. The Mishna Berura brings from Sharei Ephraim, which is again one of the main sfarim on halachot of Kriyat Torah. The im kar'u lekohen or lelevi la'haron. How about if you're not calling the Kohen as Rishon, as the first aliyah? We mentioned that the minhag of Ashkenazim is that Kohen could either get the first aliyah or the last aliyah. He could get mashlim or maftir. So now imagine, it's not the first aliyah. It's not aliyat Kohen. You called the Kohen, according to Ashkenazim, for mashlim or maftir. According to Sfaradim, it could be any other middle aliyah also, but it's not the first one. If you're calling him in the rest of the aliyot of the Torah, and he's not there, and you're calling another person to come up, even though that person also is a Kohen, right? Even though that you're calling another Kohen in his stead, still is fine. This is only for getting Aliyah Rishon and for Levi to get Sheni. That's when the problem is. In rest of the Aliyot, if you call the Kohen is not there, you could call another Kohen, you could call another Levi. There's no problem whatsoever. There's no chashash in that one. Now, by Yisraeli, we said, the Shulchan Aruch said that you could call another person out loud, because we are not choshesh for any pegam. And also we mentioned that the kohen who is shaliach tzibur could call another kohen, right? Because we're not choshesh in that one also for any concern of pegam. Says the Mishnah Berura, ואין חוששים בזה לפגמו של עצמו, שהכל יודעים שכיוון שהוא שליח ציבור. Everyone knows that because this guy is the שליח ציבור, אין סברה לומר שידחה כל הכהנים מלעלות. There's no logic that no Kohen now could get an aliyah because he is the shaliach tzibur. Everyone knows that he's shaliach tzibur, that's why he's calling someone else, not because he himself is pasul. Because nowhere it says that the shaliach tzibur should get all the aliyot of Kohen. If he's the fixed shaliach tzibur of the shul, he's the fixed Baal Koreh of the shul, what, no Kohen is going to get an aliyah? Everyone understands that. That's given. That if you're the Chazan, sometimes you get the aliyah, sometimes you give it to other Kohanim. There are 20 other Kohanim in the shul, right? So it says the Mishnah Berura, ולא מפני שהוא פגום. It's not because he's פגום, ואפילו אם הסגן הוא כהן שבידו לקרוא כל מי שירצה, או במקום שקונים מצוות עליות. It says in a place that you buy, you pay for עליות to get an עלייה לתורה, והקונה מצוות הוא כהן או לוי, and the one that bought it is a כהן או לוי, יכול לצוות לקרוא לכהן או לוי אחר. He could say, I bought it for this guy. Right? If a Kohen bought an aliyah, now this happens all the time in the Sephardi shuls. The people want to be mechabed other people, so they buy an aliyat Kohen and they give it to another Kohen. They bought aliyat Levi, they give it to another Levi. Well, that's asur? No. This is the Mishnah Berura. That's pashut, that's mutar. There's no pegam. Everyone understands that he bought it and he wants to be mechabed somebody else. Doesn't mean that he's pasul. He himself, whatever you yourself do, or the Sgan does, that is fine, because hakol yodin shehaderech hu lechabed acherim. That is the way of people. People, it's the beauty of the Jewish community. The people pay for the mitzvot and they give it to somebody else to be marbeh ahdut, to show the love and care which exists among the community, and that's why it is completely fine. There's no problem with that whatsoever. And that basically concludes the Seif Yud Aleph. We will Bezrat Hashem continue in the days to come.